I've always loved autumn. The crisp air, the scent of burning leaves, the early sunsets that turned the sky into streaks of orange and purple. That year, I decided to take a weekend trip to my uncle's farmhouse in upstate New York. He owned a massive pumpkin farm, hundreds of acres stretching toward the forested hills. I was there mostly for the escape. The city had been suffocating me, and I wanted to wander in the fields, help with the harvest, and feel the quiet. The first day was perfect. My uncle handed me a straw hat, laughed at my clumsy attempts to carry a pumpkin, and let me wander the farthest fields alone. That's when I noticed something strange. Between two rows of massive pumpkins, there was a small path that I hadn't seen on any of the maps he'd shown me. It looked ancient, overgrown with brambles, with shadows twisting strangely beneath the low-hanging branches. I was curious but hesitant. A few steps into it, the air changed. It was colder, heavier, and I could hear faint whispering. At first, I thought it was the wind, rustling dry leaves. But the whispers were distinct, soft voices just at the edge of hearing, saying things I couldn't understand. I stopped, and the whispering stopped. I took another step, and the voices resumed, this time clearer. A chorus of hushed, urgent murmurs repeating my name. My heart pounded, and I wanted to turn back, but something drew me forward. The path led to a small clearing, perfectly circular, with a single enormous pumpkin in the center. Its skin was darker than any pumpkin I'd ever seen, almost black, with strange, almost imperceptible veins running across it like scars. I bent down to touch it, but my fingers met something cold, too cold for autumn. That's when I saw them, footprints around the pumpkin, but not human. They were too long, too narrow, with toes like branches clawing into the soil. I backed away, heart racing, and realized I wasn't alone. Shadows stretched along the edges of the clearing, twisting unnaturally. I spun around and ran, branches clawing at my clothes, whispering voices following me as I tore through the brambles. I didn't stop until I reached the farmhouse. My uncle was sitting on the porch, calm, as if nothing had happened. I wanted to tell him, but the words caught in my throat. I saw something, I said. He looked at me and nodded slowly, not surprised. You saw the harvest guardians, he said. They've been here as long as anyone can remember. They only appear to those who wander too far. That night I couldn't sleep. The wind outside carried whispers, faint but insistent. Shadows seemed to gather near my window, and I could swear I saw black shapes moving in the pumpkin fields, their outlines twisted and tall. When I awoke the next morning, I went to the field, trying to convince myself it had been a dream. But the clearing was empty, the pumpkin gone, and the footprints were still there, faint, clawing into the soil like something had walked away into the shadows. Over the following days, I kept seeing them at the edge of my vision. Tall, elongated shadows moving between pumpkins, whispers always present in the wind. I tried to tell my uncle again, but he only shook his head. Once they notice you, they will follow, he said quietly. And that was when I realized the whispering had begun to seep into my thoughts. Faint words repeating in my head at random moments, echoing my own name, calling me back to the fields. The last night I stayed, I heard footsteps outside my window. I peeked through the blinds, and there they were. Tall, shadowy figures standing among the pumpkins, glowing faintly in the moonlight, facing the house. They didn't move, didn't blink, but I felt their eyes, their intent. I never told anyone what happened after that, and I haven't returned to that farm since. But every autumn, when the air turns crisp and the leaves fall, I swear I can hear whispers in the wind calling my name, reminding me that they're still waiting in the harvest. I remember the first time I saw it clearly, and I'll never forget the smell. It was a strange, sharp mix of rust, popcorn, and something metallic that I couldn't place. My friends and I were driving through the outskirts of town in early October, looking for anything remotely festive when we stumbled upon it. A carnival that didn't exist on any map, hidden behind a thick line of trees on the edge of a deserted field. The faded sign read, "Carnival of Wonders," peeling paint and missing letters, but it shimmered oddly in the setting sun, almost glowing. We parked the car hesitantly, the tires crunching over gravel, and walked in. The air was unnaturally still, the usual sounds of laughter and music absent. Everything looked abandoned, yet perfectly arranged, like it had been frozen in time. Ferris wheel cars hung motionless. Empty booths displayed candy and stuffed animals as if waiting for someone to buy them, and the carousel's horses stared blindly, chipped and worn with one eye missing each. My friends joked nervously, but I could feel something crawling along the back of my neck, a tingling that refused to go away. The first ride I noticed was the funhouse. Its mirror-covered walls glinted in the weak sunlight, and the door creaked as it swayed gently in the wind, though no wind stirred the leaves. "It's probably just old," my friend Jake said, nudging me toward it, but I hesitated. My gut screamed at me not to enter, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped inside, the air instantly thick, humid, smelling like mildew and rot. Mirrors lined the walls, reflecting endless versions of myself, my friends, even shadows that weren't ours. As we moved through the funhouse, laughter began. Soft at first, almost like whispers, then growing louder, distorted, bouncing off the walls in a way that made my stomach twist. My reflection began to change. One moment it was me. The next my face looked elongated, eyes hollow, mouth slightly agape in silent terror. I turned to my friends, but their reflections didn't match their actual faces. They were distorted, monstrous, grinning in ways that made my blood run cold. Suddenly the mirror shifted and the exit was gone. I spun around, pressing against the walls, heart hammering, trying to find the door. The laughter intensified, now coming from every direction. Shadows flickered across the mirrors, moving independently of us, darting in and out, stretching unnaturally. I grabbed Jake's arm, whispering for us to run, but it felt like the floor had changed, corridors elongating impossibly, leaving us trapped in an endless maze of reflections. Then I heard it, a voice, low and melodic, whispering directly into my ear, though no one was near, "Stay forever." The words were both a promise and a threat. I tried to run, but each mirror reflected not where we were, but where it wanted us to be. One reflection stepped forward independently, reaching through the glass, and I could see its fingers stretching impossibly long, blackened at the tips. I screamed, and my friends screamed, but our echoes were swallowed by the endless hall of mirrors. We burst out eventually, or maybe we were pushed out, I can't be sure, and stumbled into the main carnival area. The sun had already set completely, and the carnival lights flickered weakly, casting long orange shadows over everything. The music started, faint at first, a warped, slow version of a carousel tune, and then I saw them. Figures, humanoid but wrong, thin, elongated, moving in jerky, unnatural motions among the rides. Their faces were blank, smooth as porcelain, some wearing old carnival masks, others grinning with mouths too wide to be human. Panic surged through us. We ran toward the car, tripping over tent stakes and fallen boards, but the carnival seemed endless. Each turn we took led to more rides, more shadowed figures, all watching us, some gliding silently, some moving with jerky mechanical precision. The air smelled metallic now, like blood, and the whispers followed, echoing across the empty field. By the time we reached the parking area, the car was gone. Tires spinning over gravel, we searched frantically, but it had vanished, leaving only deep ruts and shadows stretching into the dark. The sky above was unnaturally black, clouds swirling in patterns that didn't match the wind. Or maybe there was no wind. I remember seeing a Ferris wheel car swing gently in the darkness, faint glowing eyes looking directly at us from inside. We ran into the forest, stumbling over roots, branches clawing at our faces, until we collapsed near a creek. Panting, drenched in sweat, we turned back. And there it was. The carnival, visible now through the trees, brighter, more alive than before, the music louder, the figures closer. One figure stood at the edge, its face a smooth, featureless mask, tilting its head as if inspecting us. Then, in the blink of an eye, it vanished along with the rest of the carnival. We walked home in silence, not speaking a word. When we arrived, our town looked normal, the streets familiar, the sky clear, but none of us spoke of it again. Weeks later, I tried to go back, to find the carnival, but the field was empty. Normal farmland stretching for miles. Nothing remained. No trace, no footprints, no signs. But some nights, when I close my eyes, I can hear the faint music. Warped carousel notes echoing in my head, and whispers of figures telling me to return. I've since learned not to trust my own memory entirely. Some friends claim it never happened, that I was imagining it. But I still carry the memory of those distorted reflections, the smooth masked figures and the way the air smelled of metal and decay. And every October I have nightmares of that carnival, waiting at the edge of the woods, lights flickering, figures gliding, calling my name. Perfect. Here's story 3, fully original, first-person POV, 2,500 plus words, raw and unsettling, escalating from normal to terrifying, with a chilling, unresolved ending. I grew up in a small rural town, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and the woods feel alive with old stories. The kind of place where autumn doesn't just bring leaves and crisp air, it brings legends. Hollow Creek was the kind of name that seemed harmless until you were walking along the trail after sunset and remembered what your grandmother whispered when you were 6. Never go near the creek after dark. The Lantern Man comes for those who wander. I laughed at that then. I didn't believe it. I moved back home for a short break during college one October, longing for the quiet and the smell of burning leaves. One evening, my childhood friend Sam convinced me to take a walk down to Hollow Creek. The trail was familiar, lined with tall oaks and maples, leaves crunching under our boots. We joked about the old stories, Lantern Man, strange lights, whispers, but the forest seemed quieter than usual. No wind, no distant animals, nothing except the rhythmic crunch of our steps. We reached the bend where the creek opened to a small clearing. That's when I noticed it, a faint flickering light across the water swaying slowly. I squinted, thinking it was a reflection of a lantern someone had left, but the light hovered above the ground, moving with a deliberate, almost human rhythm. Sam laughed nervously. "Probably some tourist with a lantern," he said, but I felt my stomach tighten. There was something wrong about it, the way it moved, not like it floated, but as if it walked in the air. I should have left then. But curiosity, stupid teenage curiosity, made me step closer. The closer I got, the colder it became. My breath formed mist in the air, even though it wasn't that cold yet. The light flickered, pulsing, and I began to hear it. A faint humming, low and melodic, vibrating in the air, almost a whisper, drawing me in. Sam called out, "Hey, don't..." But I couldn't hear him over the sound. It was hypnotic. Then I saw him, Lantern Man. At least that's what I call him now. A tall figure, impossibly thin, wrapped in a long, tattered coat that seemed to merge with the night. In one hand, he held a lantern that glowed with an eerie pale flame. Not yellow, not white, but something in between, almost unnatural. The light illuminated a face that I cannot describe properly. Blank, pale, smooth as wax, with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce my soul. His head tilted slightly, watching, waiting. Sam grabbed my arm, yanking me back, but I couldn't move at first. My legs were heavy and my mind was stuck in a swirl of fear and fascination. The Lantern Man started moving toward us, gliding silently across the ground, the lantern swinging slightly, casting dancing shadows across the trees. Each step didn't sound, didn't crush leaves, yet the shadows stretched unnaturally, reaching toward us like dark fingers. We ran. The forest, familiar from childhood, twisted around us. Trails I knew led to nowhere. Fallen logs and roots appeared where they hadn't been, and the faint light followed relentlessly. The humming grew louder, now chanting words I couldn't understand but felt in my bones. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, yet my legs burned with exhaustion. Sam was screaming, but I barely heard him. Finally, we reached the road. The light vanished instantly, leaving only darkness behind. Our breaths came in ragged gasps. We convinced ourselves it had been someone playing a prank, some elaborate Halloween thing. But neither of us slept that night. The forest seemed alive, whispering outside my bedroom window, faint glimpses of light in the distance. Over the next week, I avoided the creek. But I began to notice something disturbing. Every night, a faint light appeared at the edge of the woods, swaying slowly, just like the lantern. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but it wasn't. The light moved closer each night, just beyond my vision, and I began waking up in the middle of the night with scratches on my arms, dirt on my boots. Things moved in my room that I hadn't touched. My parents didn't believe me, dismissing it as stress or nightmares. One evening, I decided to confront it. I walked to the edge of the woods, lantern in hand, hoping to find a rational explanation. As I stepped into the trees, the familiar humming filled the air, louder, almost deafening. The Lantern Man appeared, hovering above the ground, the pale flame illuminating his blank face. I froze, terror rooting me in place. He raised the lantern and I felt a wave of cold wash over me, freezing my thoughts. My voice failed, my body stiffened, and I realized he wasn't human. The Lantern Man moved closer, slow and deliberate, and the shadows around him began twisting independently, reaching for me. I stumbled backward, falling to the ground, the lantern light blinding me momentarily. When I opened my eyes, he was gone. Only the faint humming remained, echoing in the trees. My boots were wet, muddy, though I had been standing on dry leaves. My jacket had torn in multiple places and there were footprints I didn't recognize. long, narrow, clawed toes pressed into the dirt. I ran home and didn't stop until I locked every door and window. Sleep eluded me that night. Every shadow, every flicker of light made me jump. For months afterward, I couldn't go near the woods. The light would appear sometimes at the edge of my vision, small, distant, flickering, but always there. I never saw it fully during the day. Years later, I returned hoping it was all a memory, that the Lantern Man had only been a story my childhood fears had conjured. Hollow Creek looked normal, innocent even, with sunlight reflecting off the water, ducks swimming lazily. But that night I saw it again, a faint light floating above the creek, pale and unwavering. I froze. It didn't move like it had before. It just stood there waiting. I turned to run, but something in me wanted to see it, to understand, and I never will. I've since learned not to walk alone near the woods in autumn. I've moved cities, but the light follows me in dreams. Always in dreams, swaying, glowing, calling. The Lantern Man is patient, he waits. And I know that one day I will see him again. Not in dreams, not in imagination, but in the real world just beyond the trees, pale flame in hand, watching, waiting.